In boardrooms around the world, executives invest millions in team building retreats and quirky office perks while shareholders ask just one thing: show us the results. Today on Thought Leaders, we're taking off the gloves to ask, is company culture overrated? Do outcomes and performance trump fruit platters and wellness Wednesdays? Let's dive in. Culture doesn't keep the lights on, results do.
The reality is that if you say that results are more important than culture, then that actually becomes your culture.
Culture might make work enjoyable, but results make it sustainable.
Toxic cultures can actually have a turnover of 48% higher.
And let me be honest, there's companies globally like WeWork who had kombucha on tap and a community-first culture, and they lost billions. So welcome back to Edge Case, the Thought Leaders experiment where we take some of the industry's thorniest questions and unpack them through lively debate. I'm Samantha McLean, and today we're going to explore whether company culture is overrated and if results are all that really matter. Remember, Edge Case isn't about picking winners, it's about giving our guests room to argue positions with conviction, even if they don't personally agree with them, so that all of us can stress test ideas and challenge our own assumptions. So with that in mind, let's meet our two brilliant guests. Tameka Smith has dedicated more than 2 decades to property management. She's founded and sold a boutique rent roll and been named Australia's best property manager by the Real Estate Institute of Australia. So Tameka, you've had a huge year of training with the REIT and you've just been made an associate of the REIA at the recent REIT Awards. Congratulations. What does it mean to you?
Thanks, Sam. I think it really cements my belief about education in our industry, that really underpins everything we do, and that we can always keep learning and we can keep being better and support each other. So yeah, it was really exciting.
And we're also thrilled today to have Sophie Lyon. Sophie has spent more than 30 years in property management, working with iconic Melbourne brands like Jellis Craig, Philip Webb and others. So Sophie, we last caught up at PM1. What have you been up to since then?
Everything all over the place. There's lots of training going on. Lots of people who are ironically wanting to develop their company cultures a little bit more. And so we won't go into that just yet. But so there's been a lot going on. It's been a really busy year, but it's been so much fun.
So today's topic is that company culture is overrated. Results are all that matter. Shall we have firstly a look at how we arrived at the topic? Okay. So the purpose of this is to choose your edge case topic, and what's going to happen today while Sophie's at the airport is I'm going to give you a choice of 3 topics, and I'm going to give you a look at them now, and then what I'm going to do is flip a virtual coin. One of you will choose heads or tails. If you're right, you'll choose the topic, and the other person will choose whether they're affirmative or negative. If you lose the toss, the other person will choose the topic, and the other person will choose affirmative or negative. There you go. That was all clear as mud, right?
Fabulous.
Topic 1 is that company culture is overrated, that results are all that matter. Topic number 2 is that property management firms should guarantee rent to landlords. And topic number 3 is property management agencies should transparently display all their fees online like a menu. I'm going to give you heads or tails.
Heads.
All right. It's tails.
Oh, boo.
So Tameka, you get to choose the topic, and Sophie gets to choose affirmative or negative.
Let's go number 1. Let's do that. Let's have a bit of fun with that. Okay.
It comes like
it could cause some heated arguments, I reckon.
I think so. And Sophie, do you want the affirmative or the negatives?
That's a really good question. Both sides are so fun. I'm going to go negative.
All right. I love how this played out. So, Sophie, you literally said, can we both vote on topic number 1 before we even flip the coin? What is it about company culture versus results that got you so excited?
I'm mildly obsessed with company culture. It's something that I spend a lot of time when I'm going in and doing consulting, talking to people about, because it can make or break an organisation. And so I think it's incredibly important. And when I looked at those three topics, I just thought that's something that I really wanted to dive into a little bit more.
And Tameka, you immediately said this topic could cause some heated arguments, and then promptly were assigned the side that's, as I understand, completely the opposite to everything you stand for. So, did researching the other side make you think differently at all?
Yeah, absolutely. I was, I'm going to say, bulldozed into this, and it absolutely goes against everything that I thought I had ever believed in. However, I've really put a lot of research into this, and I'm really, I suppose, probably blown away with how my personal beliefs have changed. And when I look back at my career, what I thought I knew that now I might look at potentially different. So I'm really excited for what this discussion will bring to industry, and how we might look at things slightly different.
Yeah, amazing. And just one other thing. I mean, Sophie, I noticed you took a moment before choosing the negative. You said both sides seemed fun. Do you think you made do you now think you made the right call? Are you secretly wishing you chose the affirmative?
No, do you know I'm not, but I'm so excited to hear what Tameka's going to bring to this. If she's changed her own opinion, I'm really interested.
Yeah, well, okay, this sounds like it's getting interesting. And for everyone tuning in, we want you thinking too. Every Monday after we release an Edge Case episode, there will be a poll in the brief, our daily newsletter, where you can weigh in on the topic. So, quickly, here's how Edge Case works. We've got a few rounds coming up. First, opening statements from both Tameka and Sophie. Then, question time. They'll get to question each other. Round 3 is where they'll both share real examples and data. And then, my favourite bit, the truth reveal, which we've kind of given you a couple of spoiler alerts on already, but we'll see where Tameka ended up. So, okay, you two. So, are you ready to challenge some assumptions and make our audience think?
Yeah,
Yep.
let's do it.
All right, amazing. So, Tameka, I am going to give you the floor. Your time starts now.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Let me start with this. Culture sounds great. It's the buzzword every company throws around: team lunches, flexible hours, coffee machines, ping pong tables, and the list goes on and on. And gee, it sounds nice. But here's the truth: culture doesn't keep the lights on, results do. We've all heard the phrase culture eats strategy for breakfast. But here's the truth: results pay for that breakfast. Results pay wages, grow business, and create opportunities. They're measurable, objective, and essential. Culture, on the other hand, is subjective. It's based on feelings, not facts. I'm not saying culture doesn't matter. I'm saying it's overrated, because without results, there's no company left to have culture. Think about some of the most used brands in the world, like Apple, Amazon, or Netflix. They didn't become world leaders because of their culture. Their culture developed because of their success. When a business performs well, morale follows. Winning creates pride, not the other way around. And let me be honest, there's companies globally like WeWork who had kombucha on tap and a community-first culture, and they lost billions. Their culture couldn't save them from poor results. So I'm sure when Sophie says today, culture drives performance, remember this: performance shapes culture. When people achieve goals, they feel motivated and connected. Culture might make work enjoyable, but results make it sustainable. Culture is the atmosphere, results are the oxygen. And without oxygen, culture cannot breathe.
Wow, that was actually timed like a property manager, like, you know, like I've got a KPI to meet and I'm absolutely gonna meet it. So well done, Tameka. That was I was hoping that was the argument that you were going to put forward. So I guess Sophie, it is time now for the floor to be yours. So would you like to make your opening statement?
Okay, so the reality is that if you say that results are more important than culture, then that actually becomes your culture. And the danger that you have in that organization is that people are just constantly chasing the next deal, the next bit of income that they can possibly find. And what that also has the knock-on effect of doing is that it creates an organisation that is based on distrust, dishonesty, and a lack of alignment. Having organisations like that actually derails long-term results. The results might be there in the short term, but in the long term, what you're actually looking at is that they are perhaps fragile and sometimes unethical, which is a real danger in an organisation. When you're creating an organisation that is based on a great culture, something that has care and consistency and collaboration all the way through, you actually increase the retention of your team. Increasing the retention by default increases the revenue into the organisation, because it's actually a global economy is impacted by $7.8 trillion annually for unexpected turnover and quick turnover in organisations. So happier teams actually also means happier clients, which means you have greater retention, and in real estate, retention is everything.
Amazing. So some very good arguments there already. So I can see that this question time might get a little spicy. So Tameka, it's your turn to quiz Sophie on what she just said. So I'm going to start the timer. Let's go.
Yeah. So, Sophie, I suppose if you had two companies that had this same culture that you're talking about, but one consistently delivers better results than the other, where would you invest?
I think we want to have a look at the long term versus the short term. So the results and all the statistics actually show that longer term results come from companies that have good culture. I think we've got to be really careful about being deceived by organisations that perhaps do have good revenue lines, but are they necessarily going to stand up in the long term?
Can you tell me any company that you know that's failed financially but survived purely on their culture?
Failed financially but survived purely on the culture? Well, you're not going to survive purely on your culture, are you? Because your culture it doesn't have to be just results based. You can still get results out of a culture that is caring and supportive, and that has psychological safety for the employees as well. So it's not just about the results versus the culture. The culture can still deliver, but it's just not purely focused on results.
Yeah. And how valuable is positive culture in a company that can no longer exist?
Can't exist in revenue?
Yeah.
Well, I think there's a lot more to it than just the culture of that organisation. I think you want to have a look at the people that are actually running it, and perhaps who was running the balance sheet as opposed to who was running the culture.
All right, that's all we've got time for. My editor told me that we had to be brutal on the timing from now on. So I'm going to hand it over to Sophie. You can now ask some questions of Tameka.
Okay, sure. So Tameka, if results are all that matter, how do you account for the cost of replacing staff when poor culture drives people out?
Is it poor culture, or is it poor leadership, or is it poor resources? I think, again, that's something that could be investigated right through a company, because it might not necessarily be what we call culture. It actually could be leading from the top. It could be the person is not the right fit. That rotten apple sitting in the basket can have a really negative effect. Are they the rotten apple, or is it actually something the company is doing? Do they need a ping pong table? No. Probably not. Do they need some more wins on the board? Probably they do, because businesses are winning and successful, the culture thrives.
So if we're looking at employees that are disengaged and burnt out, can the results be sustainable if employees feel that way?
I think that depends. There's a lot of variables. If leaders are feeling burnt out, they do need to lead by example, and they need to get themselves a business coach, or they need to have some time off. They need to potentially put in some middle management that can foster those relationships and make sure that the results are still there, and then the culture will, of course, follow. But leaders that are burnt out, they need to lead by example and get themselves some help and support.
There we go. Tameka's finished right on the dot again. So amazing job. Now we've got one more round to go, which is where you both present some hard data on both sides of your argument. So Tameka, I'll let you go first again.
Okay, great. So my hard data round, I looked at Amazon, and so Amazon's leadership principle is all about deliver results. It's not just a slogan, it's a metric. In 2024, Amazon's operating income rose 36.9 billion. That's up 200% on the previous year. And that was after their CEO, Andy Jassy, doubled down on performance over efficiency, over the nice to have culture programs. Amazon was often criticised for its tough culture, but it's the performance obsession that built the world's most customer-centric company. The culture results followed that, not the other way around. Netflix is another really great example. They run the freedom and responsibility myth. Netflix is praised for its open culture by founder Reed Hastings. He said adequate performance gets a generous severance package. Their results first powered a 34.9 billion in revenue and a 36% market share in global streaming in 2024. Netflix culture is not about comfort, it's about performance of freedom. You can do what you want as long as you deliver the results. When we look at companies like these, one pattern stands out. They build world-class cultures because they first build world-class results. Amazon didn't become great because of ping pong tables, it became great because it performed. Netflix didn't preach work-life balance, it preached accountability and freedom with results. That's the truth. Results drive culture, not the other way around.
Very compelling argument there, and some good stats from one of my favourite companies, Amazon. So I guess, Sophie, what is your response to that?
Well, I think that what we also have to look at is organisations that have gotten themselves into huge amounts of trouble because they have had a very poor and toxic culture. So when you look at Australia alone, we are talking about organisations like the Commonwealth Bank, ANZ Bank, Telstra, Optus, even the Coroner's Court. They have been caught up in huge fines, like phenomenal amounts of fines. And when all of those issues were traced back, they were traced back to an incredibly poor culture. So culture within itself, and every organisation has culture. I'm not saying that a dynamic culture and something that is a striving culture is a bad thing at all, but it still needs to be positive and it needs to be supportive in order to hold on to people in the organisation. Companies such as the Harvard Business Review, they actually did a study that showed that strong cultures saw a 400% increase in revenue growth over a 10-year period in organisations. And others that prioritise culture were 12 times more likely to achieve business growth. Then you're also looking at people who want to work with organisations. 65% of employees in a study actually said that they would prefer to take a lower pay than work with an organisation that had a toxic structure, and that toxic cultures can actually have a turnover of 48% higher than other organisations.
All right, some interesting numbers there as well. So I guess all that's left to do, apart from like have a bit of a banter about this between ourselves, you've got a further 90 seconds to make us believers with your final closing statement. So Tameka, on the affirmative, away you go.
So Sophie says culture drives performance, and I get it. It sounds really great, but let's be real. The results actually drive the culture. When teams win, they feel proud, unified, and motivated. That's culture. Culture can't survive without outcomes, and we've seen local companies go bust for that. Results don't make culture irrelevant, though. They make it possible, and they make businesses thrive for it. Businesses, because you can't celebrate teamwork in a company that doesn't exist. Culture might make work more pleasant and enjoyable, but results keep the business alive. And that's why results are what truly matter in growing and developing a really great culture.
Okay. And you're, yeah. Well, I can actually see why, because, you know, that it is a bit of a mic drop when you say, well, you know, you can have the greatest culture in the world, but it won't exist if, you know, if the company doesn't thrive in some way. So it's hard to come back from that one, but Sophie, I'm sure you're going to give it a go.
I think all the way through, we have actually been talking about culture and the importance of culture. So the argument that culture isn't important in respect of results, they're actually a combination of both. What we need is a culture that supports people, but also drives and strives for those results. But we can't have an organisation that just purely concentrates on results, because that ends up having a toxic outcome, because everyone just keeps looking for the dollars. So having organisations that have that really fantastic balance between the two, where they're looking after their people, but they're also looking after their investors, their shareholders, their directors, and being able to deliver those results and those revenue growths, they're delivering those back to the people in the organisation, then that just continues to drive and thrive all the way through. I don't argue that there are organisations that have great cultures that don't survive, but that's more to do with the business strategy of the organisation than the actual culture of the organisation. So when we're looking to build a long-term business, we need to be focusing on the people that are there, what we're giving to those people, how we're training them, how much they are invested in the company. Because everyone wants to be part of a team. Everyone wants to be part of a collaborative effort. And in order for those outcomes to come, if we've got everybody driving towards the same thing, both things are achievable.
All right. So this is clearly a very interesting topic, with a lot of nuances, I think. And I'll get to what I think in a second, because this really isn't about me. It's about you two. So this is where we get to drop the debate position. So Tameka, where did you land after doing the research?
So, I found it really interesting. So, whilst I absolutely believe culture is important, and I have been banging on about that for the last 2 decades and nearly wanted to die when I got given this topic, I was actually terrified, and it's really challenged me. But I suppose the more that I've researched it, the more I've reviewed and looked back over my career, I've sort of changed the way I look at culture a little bit. I honestly believe that my business success was all about the culture I created. And everyone heard me talk about that for years and years and years. And I credited that to all of my success. But there's actually no way that I would have achieved what I did without the results. I saw what happened when the results slipped. So did the culture. Culture can slip quickly, and it can turn into stress and finger pointing, and people get into survival mode, and we see that. And, now I look back and really analyze my career and business and relationships. When the results were their best, the culture flourished because we all felt better and everyone wanted to succeed. And so I think when teams see exceptional results, they want to be part of the wins. They want to work in that business. And that's what creates really great, meaningful culture. So I really believe that results and culture go hand in hand. I don't think one is more important than the other, but you can't have one without the other. Culture should support the results, not replace them.
Interesting. And Sophie, what do you really believe?
Well, I think the problem is I agree with Tameka, but my thought process is that exactly what I just said. You've got to have an organisation that looks after its people, but also does drive towards the rewards and the outcomes and the goals that the organisation sets. Because if you don't have that, you're exactly right. What have you got? A whole lot of people sitting around in beanbags eating twisties. It's just, it sounds nice, but that is not going to keep the lights on, and it's not going to keep your investors, partners, shareholders, whatever it might be, happy. So I think that it's probably a middle ground is the easiest way for me to explain it. I think, the results are incredibly important in every organisation, but culture is really important as well.
Yeah. So here's my question to both of you. I'm a believer that both culture and results matter. Does the industry confuse culture with perks? So what I mean by that is, the way that I would define culture is, accountability, growth, clear expectations, which drives results. But, is the problem really sort of, like the idea of pizza parties versus authentic culture? Tameka, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely, Sam. I agree with that. And when I look back at my business, I had so many perks for everyone, and they were perks. And the perks were there when we were performing. but the perks can't be there when you're not performing. And, culture is about that accountability and wanting to be better and drive for better results. And that's the feel good stuff. And then the perks come, they flow from that. And yeah, I really do believe that you're right. Like culture is a form of accountability, that it retains and helps recruiting much better when you've got a good culture, but then you can, of course, throw in the perks.
What do you think, Sophie?
I think I'll give you an example of things that that we saw happen straight after COVID, and especially in Melbourne, this is like really relevant. But we were all locked down for a couple of years, so we were all very used to working from home. And then organisations were trying to get people to come back into the office, and they were throwing all kinds of things, so they were doing, drinks on a Friday, pizza parties, taco trucks, all these things that they were trying to get people back into the office with the perks. But what they hadn't considered was trying to actually bring people back in simply for connectivity, collaboration, communication, all those sort of things. That was what people were looking for, versus a taco truck or a perk or a Coke machine in the kitchen. So I've seen so many examples of companies that don't live the culture. They talk about it, they put it on a wall, but they don't actually live it. And I think that's a killer of companies as well. That's a huge one.
It was just yesterday I was listening to something Gary Vee was talking about on YouTube, and this is where I don't know that the culture or the perks might go too far. So now I'm sort of a bit defending Tameka's position, I suppose. Gary was talking about a company that was about to move to Florida, and they gave their employees a year's notice that they were going to move. They said, you've still got your job, you've got a year's notice that we're moving, but we need you back in the office. So you've got a year to sort yourself out. You're not going to lose your job, but we're not going to, promote you or give you any salary increases if you decide to stay put and stay where you are. And as I understand, I hope I'm sort of retelling this story correctly, but this was a business decision based on, it being cheaper to run a business in Florida than where they were. And so there was this social media uproar from the employees that, that they wouldn't get, focusing on that one thing that had been removed. Now, as a leader, when you sort of give, how do you deal with that sort of thing? Do you think that was fair, unfair? I might start with Sophie first, seeing as Tameka's been first all along.
She has been first all the way through. Give her a break. I think that it depends on the way that it was delivered as well. So getting them a year's notice, I think, is phenomenal. But there are a whole lot of reasons why people can't necessarily move themselves all the way across the country. So I think that was probably a bit extreme to be saying to people, you're effectively going to be punished in your career if you don't come with us to the other side of the country. So I think perhaps that was short-sighted with the organisation to say that to people, and that therefore has impacted the culture. It's impacted perhaps their retention. People might have gone, well, if I'm not going to get growth, I'm going to go. So I think from a leadership perspective, they probably didn't really think out the delivery of that.
Tameka, to your earlier point, is that leadership and not culture?
Yeah, it probably is. And, it's sort of hard to say without knowing all of it. But I think, as leaders, we can sometimes get in that trap of give. To what end? Where does it stop? And because at some stage, business leaders or owners have got to make some hard decisions to keep the lights on. And so when we've continually give to create what we think is a great culture, that's generally when you'll see your results start to suffer. And probably in this business's case, okay, we've give, and now we can't keep the business here. And the only way to keep the business and keep you in a job is to make some kind of dramatic change. And then, of course, there is a percent of people that are not going to cope with that. Then I don't know. I sort of put those people in that rotten apple category, because are they then the ones that are going to spread and damage the business even further? What Sophie said, I think there's multiple ways to look at that. But I do think it is a trap for businesses and business owners, that continual give to try and create what they think is a great culture, it's a trap. It is a real trap, and it gets lost on people.
The idea of the organisation moving to the other side of the country, I think that's extreme. That's an extreme example of having to make changes within the organisation, and I certainly think that there is a point where the company has to say, well, hang on a minute, we're actually paying you to do a role, so as part of that, we need you to deliver, and then if you deliver, we can deliver. So I think there needs to be that healthy understanding on both sides, that we're not here just to continue just to pay you and and give you pizza and give you drinks and free parking and whatever else it is that you need. You have to come in and deliver for us as part of your job description, and for us to be able to pay you the salary we pay you.
Sophie, let's say you're working for a property management firm.
Yeah. I've got a bit of experience in that. Yep.
Yep. Let's just say one of your clients has come up to you and they've got $50,000 to invest, and they say, I'm not sure what I want to do. So if we could either send everyone to a team building retreat and start, putting together a culture plan, or we could invest it in a new CRM system and generating more leads. Which one would you recommend?
I would actually say the CRM and the more leads, because that in itself is actually going to then deliver more revenue to the organisation, and that is then going to enable you to do the retreat at a later stage. So doing the retreat now without the mechanisms to say to people, okay, when you come back, we want you to get more leads. They'll come back from the retreat and go, well, where am I supposed to get these more leads from? So if you're generating the new leads in the beginning, you have that conversation, that then becomes the expectation, the delivery, the reward. I think that's a much healthier way to go.
That's the same. That's exactly what I would have said. Yeah, absolutely.
Both of you are in the business of training the next generation of property managers, just albeit in different ways. Gen Z and I think it's Gen Alpha, the next one, are making up a large portion of the workforce and explicitly screen employers on places like Glassdoor, demanding like a strong company culture. So can a results-only approach even attract talent anymore, or has the labour market decided this debate for us?
That's a good question.
I think I've got kids in this generation, I suppose, that are coming into this, and my personal view, and now starting to work with people of this generation, is you just need to be really clear. I think that's what people want. They want to know what the goalposts are, and they want to know what the rules are. And if you can deliver some really clear expectations, and you can have the warm and fuzzy stuff if that's what they want, or you can have the black and white stuff if that's what they want. I think really now businesses are going to have to really adapt to each individual person, but set really clear expectations. And as businesses, we can't expect people to do above and beyond anymore. We can expect people to do their job, and I think that's fair. And then I think when people are doing their job and doing it really well, that's when your culture is going to be great, and that's where the rewards are going to come, and that's where you'll find your future leaders, because it will be that percent that want to do more than what is written on their PD. But remembering that this next gen, I think they're going to work to their PD, and you know what, that's okay.
I would agree with that completely. I think, there's been a whole lot of studies that have been done around these new, the new workforce that's coming through, and they intend to have multiple roles across multiple industries across their career. So they're not interested in hanging around for the gold watch anymore. They're not interested in, in the long-term commitment to an organisation. And I think as leaders, that's an adjustment we're going to have to make, because we think that someone comes into the company and if they're committed and they love us, then they'll stay here for forever. But they're just not going to do that anymore. So if we don't prepare ourselves for that turnover that is going to happen, then there's going to be an impact there. And I think those people who want to stick around because they are passionate and they want to grow and they want to develop, they're just going to float to the top quite naturally. I agree with you. And the rest of them are just going to continue to cycle around. Just come in, do the job, go home, move on to the next thing.
I did my own research on this topic, and I sort of felt that this debate would come out pretty similarly to how it did, is that both culture and results matter, and I'm sure you guys agree with it. But I think what is the real key question here is about timescales. It's about when each should matter more. And so I don't think, maybe the question is, it's a fun question to debate. You were right, Sophie, but what if the real question isn't whether to prioritise cultural results, but when? In what situations does each take precedence? Like a property management firm in crisis mode probably needs different priorities, let's say, than an established firm in growth mode. So I just want to ask, my final question to both of you is, how do we help agency owners know which one to emphasise in their current context? So Sophie, I'll start with you.
That is the most epic question. I think, as you said, it is going to depend on the organisation. It's going to depend on the capital. It's going to depend on whether they have existing support as far as do they start off with a rent roll they've bought, or are they building from scratch? So I think there's a whole lot of other layers in there that need to be looked at in order to determine when things should happen. If you were someone who was walking in the door on day one, you just opened the door, put your shingle out, went, here I am. I think you would have to go into growth mode pretty rapidly. And in order to be able to afford to be able to bring someone else in, when you bring someone else in, that's when you need to start creating the culture, because you're growing the organisation. It's not just you anymore. If you walked into a group, if you purchased a company and you walked in and everyone was already there, it was existing, I would say go straight to culture, because you need to put the ground rules in place for everybody who's there. And what we were talking about before, the outcome, the output, the goal, the reward.
Yeah, interesting. And Tameka, you got the first word and you're about to get the last.
Great. So, interesting question. And I suppose it depends what kind of business you're looking at what kind of scale. But I really believe when you start talking about culture, you really need to start getting your people involved in this. This is not a conversation to be had at management level, at director level. You need to be involving your people. I was really open in my business about profit, loss, growth, plans, retention, education. And our team had a real say in that. And I do believe that was why we were so successful. And I have the pleasure now of going into businesses. And I think the businesses that truly engage with their team about the results and the growth and the path of the business and what kind of rewards people want are the businesses that are most successful. I think the businesses that are still doing it the way they've always done it, or, the P&Ls behind closed doors and the results aren't shared, they're going to, I think, slowly die. Whereas the businesses that are really engaged with the people that are doing the job and are on the ground, they're going to thrive. And that's where that really good culture is going to come. And then people are going to, they're going to work hard for those results because they're engaged in it. And I think that's a big thing. Let's get people engaged in what they're doing. It's not just a job. We work with people. Let's engage with the people we work with.
Well, so we have just spent, just slightly more than 30 minutes exploring one of the most controversial questions in business leadership. And here's what I love. We sort of don't actually have a clean answer, but we do have some frameworks here for thinking about your own business. So Tameka, Sophie, I would like to thank you for coming on and exploring both sides and sharing some of your wisdom. Now, for the people at home, it is your turn. Head to the brief on Monday to cast your vote. Is company culture overrated, or do results matter more than we really think? And if this made you think, if it challenged something you believe, share it with your team. Start this conversation in your agency. So this has been Edge Case. I'm Samantha McLean. Keep questioning everything.